Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here on Oregon Legacy. I'm your host, George Carrillo. Today I've got a very special guest for all of us, Sitting Commissioner Gonzalez, and he is also running for to be the next mayor of Portland. So we've had an opportunity to meet some of the other candidates, and today, just like always in our fireside chat, it's going to be sort of lighthearted. We're not going to be talking about very much policy, just to really get to know Rene as a person. So let's bring on Rene. Rene, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Great to be with you, George.
Well, let's kick it off. I really want to know a little bit more about Renee. Were you born here? Where do you come from? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, let's start with the roots. Really, two sides to the family. My dad's family side, which is the Rene Gonzalez side. He came through South Texas, was a migrant worker for a good chunk of his youth. Eventually became a judge and federal prosecutor along the way. A real up by his bootstraps kind of story. My mom's family comes from the Portland area. I'm a fifth generation Portlander on that side, and my kids are sixth generation on that side, born in the city. Arguably, those roots go back even further when you kind of do the blended family stuff. But so deep roots here on the mom's side, dad's side up through Texas. And my folks were super adventurous. They were in the Peace Corps, traveled quite a bit. And after my dad graduated from law school, he had a chance to take a one-year gig up in Alaska. So what was supposed to be a one-year gig with three young boys, I've got two brothers, turned into a lifetime of love for Alaska for my parents. So I pretty much spent my entire youth there, born in Texas, but most of my youth in Alaska. Then came down to Willamette to play college soccer, and eventually met my wife there. She is half Ecuadorian, but like me, kind of blended multicultural family, and stayed at Willamette for law school. So in a way, I came back to deep roots in Oregon, and I spent my entire professional career up until I got into politics right here in the city of Portland, and raised three Portland-born kids here in the city.
Well, you know what? I got to say that that's pretty incredible. And I like you a little bit even more because your wife's half Ecuadorian, because I am also Ecuadorian. So when you
I
said
didn't know
that,
that.
I didn't know
Oh,
that.
we should have known that. We'll have to. That's funny. Small world. What part of Ecuador is your family from?
From Quito.
Oh, okay. Well, Angie's is kind of spread throughout. Her first name is Maria, but a lot from a place called El Carmen, which is closer to Guayaquil,
Yeah,
down south, and then some relatives in Quito area as well. So I didn't know that. Small world.
I know. I can't believe it. There's not too many Ecuadorians here in Oregon, let me tell you.
No, but I'm pretty sure my wife's family knows every single one of them. But there's a few scattered down in like Corvallis and as well as Peruvian, and but yeah, not too many.
I got a question for you because sometimes I find myself I'm not Latino enough sometimes, and so it's and,
Well, I
and,
mean,
and people like grade it whether or not you can speak like perfect Spanish sometimes.
it's I think I mean, it kind of gets into an interesting question, not just of like Latino identity, Hispanic identity, but even just broader racial identity. I think the biggest racial group in the state of Oregon is self-identified as multicultural. And a lot of us got mixed, this and that. And it's interesting because for me growing up, Latino identity was extremely important. And yet I have fairly light skin, and my first language was English. But that my folks, they met in Latin America. They spent the early years of their marriage in Latin America. While my mom's Anglo, she speaks pretty flawless Spanish, and there was this huge Latino identity that's a big part of our family. And yet, for some people, you're never Latino enough. Depending on the quality of your accent. Sometimes the quality of your English gets used against you on that score, and even sometimes if you look at things through a prism that not everyone agrees with, that they want to define who you are, and it's like, well, I don't quite fit in your box, but my family Latino identity is extremely important.
Agree with you 100% because being Latino, being Hispanic, it's more than just being able to speak the language. There's, that cultural tie to family, to our children, to being like extremely hard workers. And, that kind of leads me off to, something I was looking into your background, and I love the fact, that you've got a soccer background. You've done a lot in the community when it comes to soccer. And I see that you continue to play, which is awesome. I've got kids that are in soccer all year round league, so I'm a super fan. So let me ask you this: what is it going to take the city of Portland, Miami got Messi? What is it going to take for us to be able to get Mbappe or someone else here
Oh,
in Portland?
that is a really good question. They all want to go to New York or LA or Miami. That's a tough one. I know Merritt's worked on it and given the try, but I'd love to get a big one like that. But I think we also have to build a franchise of outside of the 35-year-olds past their prime. Notwithstanding, Messi's doing amazing things in MLS. It's been pretty unbelievable to watch, but I think we're going to, the formula in Portland's going to probably have to be less international star dependent. And, I don't think we have a choice, but it's a fair question.
I think you've done a great job with supporting our first responders. And I remember the first time I met you, I tested you a little bit, Rene. I'm going to be honest with you. I tested you, and it was awesome to see the level of support and advocacy when we first talked that you gave to those first responders. I got to say, I admire that. And, when you walk into this new realm and all eyes are on you right now, especially as a minority, what's that experience been like for you?
I got to say the Public Safety Bureau has embraced me, and in a lot of ways, I was, uncompromising when I ran around the importance of public safety, about just the extent our community was taken for granted. The folks that keep us safe, and maybe that's shaped because my dad spent time as a prosecutor and judge. But end of the day, on your worst day, it's going to be a first responder that's there to protect you, to take a step towards getting you justice, to save your loved ones' lives when they're having life-threatening incidents. So I probably started one step ahead just because of I was very clear in how I ran, how I felt about first responders. I was also running against someone who at the time, got painted as being anti first responder, at least some of them. And so, how fair that is, that's a topic for another day. But I think I started out on the right foot. And one of the things that I carried over from really my business experience is that I kind of skipped some parts of my professional career, but I spent time at a big law firm downtown, Still Reuse, and then in-house at Knowledge Universe KinderCare, which at the time was the biggest privately held company based in Portland, and had corporate law and then a corporate strategy role there. But one of the big things is like the bigger you get in as an organization, whether you're talking government or you're talking a multinational or a large company, the more important it is to actually stay really intimate with what's happened on the front line. And so the more you get into abstractions and the more complex things you deal with, it becomes all that more important to just see things at the ground level. And so I made it a priority to visit every fire station when I assumed the fire bureau within 2 years. And we got that done in about 9.5 months, all 31 fire stations. And again, that's, the agenda is I'm here to go hear what's going on in your station. What are you seeing? And you also get a chance to hear what's going on in City Hall. And there's not a lot of management go between there. That's just me talking to the troops. And my gosh, was that insightful. And it also just further strengthened the bonds with the folks on the front line. Do ride-alongs with police, including their vehicle theft task force. Get to see them in hot pursuit, even though that means something slightly different in Portland than other places. But it's so I think that's the other part of it. I never took them for granted. I kind of entered with a clear message and real perception that for our city to get out of the situation we're in, we just couldn't take these first responders for granted. And then just spending time on the front lines. And, when there's a 3-alarm fire, I'm often there in the middle of the night, just observing and not there. And you tell people good job and do some pats on the back, and then mostly make sure your helmet's on and stay out of the way. But that gets noticed. That's not, even when the cameras aren't there, the troops know you're there. And it's something we just got to keep digging in on as a community, particularly those leading.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you taking the opportunity to talk to us here on Oregon Legacy. That's going to wrap up our show for today, but I wanted to give you some last closing comments, anything that you'd like to say to the viewers.
Yeah, well, just thanks for listening in. Your next mayor for the city of Portland is going to have a once in a really century opportunity to shape what the new form of government is going to look like. There's a whole bunch that's coming down the pipe with respect to our landscape. Literally, our urban landscape is going to be defined in great ways in the next 10 years that will have multi-generational impacts, including the future of the Blazers, the Rose Quarter, what performing arts are going to look like. There's a long list of projects coming. So you got a mayor that's going to have opportunity to really shape that. And I think last but not least, it's going to be a chance to shape the spirit of a city that really had its social fabric hurt during the pandemic and the aftermath. So looking forward to the journey with y'all in a once in a generational, maybe once in a century opportunity to shape the future of the city.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us here today on Oregon Legacy. Thank you again to Rene for being with us. This was a great conversation. Remember, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.